Welcome to The Big Rich Show. This podcast will focus on conversations with friends and acquaintances within the four-wheel drive industry. Many of the people that I will be interviewing, you may know the name, you may know some of the history, but let's get in depth with these people and find out what truly makes them a four-wheel drive enthusiast. So now's the time to sit back, grab a cold one, and enjoy our conversation.
Whether you're crawling the Red Rocks of Moab or hauling your toys to the trail, Maxxis has the tires you can trust for performance and durability. 4 wheels or 2. Maxxis tires are the choice of champions because they know that whether for work or play, for fun or competition, Maxxis tires deliver. Choose Maxxis. Tread victoriously.
Why should you read 4Low Magazine? Because 4Low Magazine is about your lifestyle, the four-wheel drive adventure lifestyle that we all enjoy. Rock crawling, trail riding, event coverage, vehicle builds, and do-it-yourself tech, all in a beautifully presented package. You won't find 4Low on the newsstand rack, so subscribe today and have it delivered to you. All right, on today's episode of Conversations with Big Rich, we have Jake Good. Some of you may know Jake from back in the day driving the modified stock class, and we'll talk about his history in four-wheel drive. I know he worked for 4Wheel Parts for a while, and we'll get all of that. So Jake, thank you for coming on board and being here and spending some time with us.
Oh, well, thanks for having me. I've listened to all the podcasts, and I definitely am outclassed here, but a lot of great people that have been around the sport for a long time, and truly humbled to come on and talk with you today.
Yeah, no worries. It's time that people get to know you better. I know the guys at the events know you because you've done some announcing for us, especially on the East Coast and during our Grand Nationals. But besides that, let's get started right off. And where were you born and where'd you grow up?
Well, I was actually born and raised in Kansas City, Kansas, and more specifically, I've lived on the same piece of property for all but about a year and a half of my life. So I have not gone very far as home life is concerned. I've always been based here out of Kansas City in the Midwest.
Wow. All but about a year and a half you've been on the same piece of property. I have to say that's amazing. At least to me.
It does have its challenges because honestly I had aspirations of moving out west, closer to where the wheeling is, but my family's been on this property since the late 30s, and it makes it very difficult for me to leave. My parents live on the same property as well, so I've got instant babysitters. They watch the dogs for me when we're out of town, take care of the house, any of that stuff. So it has really afforded us a lifestyle that, would honestly require a lot more money, if we didn't have those opportunities.
Right. So it's like a family homestead. Your parents or brothers and sisters. I don't know. I only know of you. I don't know your whole family. We've never talked about family. So let's discuss that a little bit. Who's all living on the homestead?
Yeah, so we have both my parents. They're doing well. They've got a house that they built in the late 70s, and then I live in my grandparents' house. That was myself and my 2 boys. Know Caleb from rock crawling as well. He just turned 16. He's my youngest, and he is my outdoors, off-road enthusiast in the family. And then my oldest son is 19, just graduated high school, and he lives with me in the house as well. And we have one other. My great grandparents have a small house across the street, the driveway from us, that's currently vacant. It's been vacant for a number of years, but prior to that, my grandparents had a log cabin that they lived in, and my dad and my grandparents grew up in what was part of a log cabin on that property.
Wow. That is some history. That's great family history. So how big is the property?
We only have about 10 acres, but we are about 10 miles from downtown Kansas City, Missouri. So for me to work right in the heart of downtown took me about 15 to 18 minutes to get to work. And then we're surrounded by hills and valleys, and it's heavily forested. So we're very secluded back. We're about a half mile from the Missouri River, and there's nothing between us and the river besides trees.
Are you high enough in elevation that you're not in an area you get flooded? Because I know the Missouri floods like every
Yeah,
other year.
it does. It does probably really only twice, in my 43 years that I've been there, has the river gotten really high.
And
Back in
those have been
93 was one.
93? Okay, because I was going to
Yep.
say like the last 5 or 6 years, I know that where we cross over in Lincoln City or from Lincoln, Nebraska from Nebraska into Missouri, where we come down, or guess we go into Iowa first for a few miles and then into Missouri. That area there, that road's been closed numerous times over the last 10 years.
Yeah, and it's still very, very far away from us. There's a creek that runs through our property, just really about 20 yards from our house that feeds into the Missouri River. But we're definitely high enough in elevation that it doesn't affect us at all.
Oh, cool. So then on a 10-acre piece of property like that that's pretty secluded, what was that like? I would imagine you were very outdoorsy.
Yeah,
You're
for
of an
sure.
you're of an age before video games. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, my brother, I have one brother, he's 4 years younger than I am. I grew up outdoors playing in the woods, building forts, and just exploring the property and the hills and creeks that we have there. And so I would have to beg my brother to come out and play, because with him being 4 years younger, he was more of the video game generation. And so he was really into video games, and he would play things that I wasn't very good at. And it's like, I was really into car games. And it's like, well, man, I just don't get playing a video game. I would rather just go out and drive a car, or, do whatever you're doing in the video game. I'd rather do that in real life. And so that's what, from playing in the snow here in the Midwest to, if it was hot during the summer, we could go play in the woods, and it was nice and cool. We could always find a place that was, that was entertaining and fun to play, and just, explore and do all of that stuff growing up.
So did you have ATVs or motorcycles or anything like that, or just pedal bikes?
I started mowing grass when I was about 7. My parents had a little rear engine John Deere mower. It was the coolest thing in the world. And so I started mowing my parents' yard with that. My grandparents living across the street from me, my grandpa gave me it was an old Sears and Roebuck garden tractor. And it had, it was like a 10, 12 horse. So, it was a lawnmower, but it was industrial, especially for back then. And it was, it had a high-low, transfer case in it. It had a locker for the rear axle, and he had all the implements for it. So a little blade that he would use to push snow with, a disc and all that for the back that he'd use in the garden. And so when I got that, that's honestly what I started pushing the limits of. As soon as I could, I got a hold of that. I would start to push. I was mowing further and further into the woods. And eventually one summer I used it to build a road that was only 3 feet wide, but I built a road all the way up onto the plateau of one of the hills by us, which just had a little deer trail in it. And so I spent all summer, he had a garden tiller, and I used that and shovels and this tractor and built a road, which in turn at that time, I think it was 13. I had begged my parents for a dirt bike forever and ever. And my dad finally caved in. And so I used that to build a really small motocross track at my house. And so that's what just kind of kept pushing the limits of what I could do with mechanical things. And that's really kind of what what started to get me hooked into that side of, cars and things like that.
All right. Now, going into school years, did you participate in any team sports, or was it always, after school, head back home and, bust around the property? What was the upbringing like that way?
Yeah, so I lucked out. Somehow I tested into a college prep high school, which was really beneficial. It was, and it still is, in my opinion, the one of the best high schools in Kansas. But the downside of that was that it was a 5-year college prep school.
Wow.
And so there weren't things like auto mechanics or shop. The closest thing that we had was drafting. And so I took every drafting class that I could, because that's what my dad was, a drafting technician for, over 30 years. And so growing up, I wanted to be like my dad, and that's all I ever wanted to do, was to be a drafting technician for an engineering company. And so, that kind of really shaped the direction for my schooling years. And, looking back and now, going through this with my sons, I want to provide them some different opportunities that I didn't have because of going to that school. I've circled back around in my life to come back, with a career in automotive stuff. And I really fought to stay away from that as a career path. So if I would have had shop in that in high school, I think that would have changed direction for me a lot. But no, we had a ton of homework. I was not the best at doing any of that. But I went to school and paid attention to school, had almost perfect attendance every year. But then I would come home.
You were one of those kids.
That was me.
Perfect attendance.
Right. My grades didn't reflect that in any way, shape, or form, but I was there and I paid attention. I didn't learn the best from a book. And, that's kind of a trend that we see in people that are in this sport, that are, yes, or in this industry. They're much more hands-on. And I'm glad to try and give, my boys a little bit of that opportunity that I didn't have, because college was what we were supposed to do.
Right. So then after high school and doing the college prep high school, is that the year did you spend that next year and a half? Is that where you were off the property and out of the area?
It was, yeah. I went to Kansas University for 3 semesters. I struggled there as well because I didn't learn good study habits in high school. By my 3rd semester at KU, I had really learned what was working for me, but my parents were paying the bill for me to go to KU, and I just didn't feel like that was the most effective use of their money. I didn't feel like I was getting what I should be out of it. So yeah, so after 3 semesters at KU, I came back. I finished up with an associate's degree from the local community college here, and that really afforded me to transition into a good paying job working for an engineering company.
Okay. And how long were you in engineering?
I did civil engineering for almost 15 years. I started out my first job. I worked at a golf course working with golf carts, just making sure they were washed and put away. And of course, I may not have driven those appropriately at all times, but
that's okay, because you were washing them, so
that's
nobody
right. Knew. And then I went and I worked for O'Reilly Auto Parts for about 4 years, and I really loved it. I loved building the customer relations and helping people with their vehicles, but I kind of got pushed away. I was doing both night manager and assistant manager and helping with store manager duties right when I left, and my regional manager said, you should really pursue something in what you're schooling, keep doing that and go to work in engineering. And since he kind of pushed me in that direction and didn't offer me advancement in the parts store arena, I stepped away from that completely, and for the most part did 15 years of civil engineering. I did a lot of traffic engineering with traffic signals,
So you're one
street
of those
signs, guide
guys that we
signs,
can.
all of that.
So you're one of those guys that we can blame for traffic circles.
Yes. Well, traffic circles, all the crazy DDI interchanges where you drive on the wrong side of the road.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, I've worked on all of that stuff. So, and I loved it. It was really a lot of fun, but I was very limited because I didn't have a 4-year degree. And I really felt that my skill set that I had in drafting was very limited. I felt that really I was doing something that a kid coming out of high school could jump right in and do the same thing I was. So I really felt that I was very limited moving forward in that career, that at some point they're going to say, this guy's making too much money, we need to get rid of him.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. I'm going to say about traffic circles. I absolutely, as a truck driver, or driving the Taj Mahaler, I hate traffic circles. And I think it's going to take probably 2 generations for Americans to get used to driving them. I know they can drive them in Europe because everybody kind of grew up with them. They've had it for a long enough time where traffic circles make sense. But in this country, nobody knows how to merge anyway. And so when you get to a traffic circle, everybody just stops instead of just, works into the flow. And it's going to take 2 generations until people figure it out. And heck, the generation that's ready to drive now, or, say 30 and less, most of them don't want to drive anyway. So it's...
Yeah, for sure. Well, coming from the engineering side, my issue is that, like anything, it's like, I don't know why they designed this the way that they did. There were so many improperly designed, roundabouts, and there's a big difference between honestly a traffic circle and a roundabout, but we're talking semantics on,
right.
For general purposes. But yeah, on a roundabout, there's so much information and so much design that really needs to go in there, to control the speed of the vehicle coming in, but also to aid in getting through the circle. So, and we saw a lot of companies that just, I don't know if they didn't know what they were doing, but made it very difficult for people to come in and make a hard 90-degree turn to try and get a semi-truck through. It just was ridiculous. So
yeah.
I felt good about a lot of the work that we did. I worked with some really great engineers, and took a lot of pride in what we did. And I thought that we designed some really good functional stuff, but that's not the case, nationwide, unfortunately.
Okay. Well, I'll give you a pass on that then. So after the engineering, you basically said you're going to go find something else.
Yeah. So I had actually been talking with, my heart honestly is in Colorado, and that's really, I grew up with my parents. We would go and take a week-long vacation every year, and more often than not, we would go to Colorado and have a camping vacation. My parents would, take us up, and we would run all these different mining roads, go see if we could find this mine, or follow a herd of bighorn sheep, all day, just because it was a really cool thing to do. And so my off-road experience really started, at a very young age. I was born in 78. My dad started with a 72 Blazer. He had like an FJ55. In 78, he had a brand new CJ7. And then decided that wasn't a good idea with a newborn. And then in 80, started him with Ford Broncos. And so he had, a number of full-size Ford Broncos. And so that's kind of where my Ford background has come in. And he was, he got me into early Broncos just because, man, that was, those were cool trucks. So
still are.
Yeah. So I was looking at a shop here in Kansas that was talking about opening an accessory place over outside of Denver. And I thought, that would be a really good fit to maybe to transition out there and see if I could make that a fit. And in the meantime, Four Wheel Parts came into town, and they were opening a brand new store. Being in the industry for as long as I have, I knew a lot of the managers and a lot of people that worked for Four Wheel Parts, and they offered me an assistant manager position there, and I thought, man, that just sounds like it's so much fun. And unfortunately, with the way things go with staffing, within 6 months I was moved into the manager's position there, and I became overwhelmed, and I worked so hard to build the best reputation for a Four Wheel Parts shop that I possibly could, because when you own a chain, I mean, you worked for auto parts as well.
Yep.
You know that it's easy to get a bad reputation, and we were given the opportunity to build our brand here in the Midwest, because the next closest store was 4 hours away. So we didn't have people that were familiar with Four Wheel Parts and didn't have a bad taste already. So if they had a bad taste, it was because we didn't do our job, at our store to do the right thing and take care of our customers. So I worked really hard to get that out there. We did extremely well with the Jeep side of things, just because, being an active member in the off-road community here for so long, it was very easy for me to sell our Jeep stuff. Where I struggled was on the truck side of things. And, where our Texas shops, boy, they sold truck stuff, 10-inch lifts, 8-inch lifts, 22, 24-inch wheels, big Brodozer trucks all day long.
A completely different mindset here in Texas.
It is. Yeah. And I drive an F-150 that it's a 2015. It has a level kit on the front, and it has 37 1350 20s on it. So I like big tires and low lifts, and that's a completely different style. I want something that's functional,
Right.
where we can go take this through Colorado and explore 90% of every trail in Colorado comfortably, and in a vehicle like this.
So then you got started early driving the roads in Colorado and stuff in the CJs. Your first vehicle then was a Bronco?
Yeah. My dad bought me, would have been in about 93. My dad bought me an early Bronco. We went through the Kansas City Star, which was our local paper, and we searched through classifieds. And even back then, trying to find a rust-free Bronco in the Midwest was impossible then. And I looked at trucks that, even with the doors closed, I could see all the way through one side and out the other. And they were still asking good money for them, even back then. But a friend of my dad's had an old 76 Bronco Sport sitting on his property, and we made a deal and brought it home. And then it took a little over a year, maybe almost 2 years, before I was even able to drive it, cutting out all the rust, the floor pans and rocker panels and the door post and all of that. I had to, replace it all in order to have a fairly solid truck. And even then, it was my first vehicle that I'd been that deep into. So it wasn't perfect, but I learned a lot. I had a 110 flux core welder, and that's what we used to build that, back together. But I would spend a whole year prepping that truck for a week's vacation in the mountains.
Wow.
So, and then we'd go out, we'd camp. And I remember my first trip, we went to Ouray, Colorado. We flat towed it out to Colorado Springs, drove it almost to the top of Monarch Pass, and my dad had to tow me over the rest of the way because it wouldn't run. And
Carburetor,
yeah. We spent so much time, so trying to get it to run right. I ran to the top of Yankee Boy Basin with it in first gear, transfer case in low and accelerator to the floor, just trying to keep it chugging along. And we got up there and got back. So I would come home after those trips and go, all right, well, this didn't work and this didn't work. And so I'd spend the next year making changes, and then we'd go out for vacation again and see how it worked and see if, what improvements I did. So over and over again through the years, just kept refining the truck. And then finally in 97, I was buying a body for my truck because it was still just continuing to rust out. And so I bought a whole new Bronco. Took me 6 loads to get it home. I rented a U-Haul trailer for the chassis, but it came with 2 engines and 2 axles for the front, 2 rear axles. It had a fuel injected motor. It had 3 transmissions. So it took me 6 loads to get all this stuff home because it was in complete disarray, just a huge basket case. But I was living at home. I was working at the parts store, and so I didn't go in until noon, and then I worked until 9. And so I would get home from the parts store and put this truck together from a bare frame, and I had it back together in about 6 months. But every ounce of free time I put into it and built the truck that I still have today.
Wow. That's awesome. So at what point did you go from that Jeep? What point did you go from the Bronco?
It's all right. I'll let you slide on that.
I'm going to be honest, this whole little part there that I just screwed up on is going to get edited out. So,
well, you can edit mine too.
Okay. From the Bronco, what you were building and working on, obviously it wasn't a daily driver if you were working on it all the time, or was it? Did you have something else that you drove, or was that your daily driver and you were working on it?
Yeah, no, that was my daily driver. I drove a Bronco from, I would have started my junior year, and I drove that truck almost every day until probably 2001. And I bought my dad's 92 Bronco from him. I did have a stint where I ended up blowing up the engine in that Bronco. I paid a guy, we all start somewhere. Right. When I was working at O'Reilly's, I paid a guy to put a carburetor on it for me because I had no idea how to do that. As I drove that truck more and more, it developed a knock. And so I had the same guy rebuild the engine and put it back together for me. It only lasted a year, and something came apart. And so I was at KU at that time, and I needed transportation. So my dad bought me a very well used 91 S10 4-cylinder 5-speed that I used to get back and forth, from Kansas City to Lawrence. But other than that, I drove that truck. And when I pulled the motor out, I borrowed I would say a garage, but it was so drafty. I ended up having to rent one of those big salamander heaters because I pulled the engine in the dead of winter, and it was so cold in there, and there was holes in this barn everywhere. But I pulled that engine out with everything that I carried in the truck with me, except for a 5/8 combination wrench, because I was missing that, and I needed that to get the transmission to engine block bolts out and the engine hoist. So I carried all the tools that I needed to repair my vehicle, because obviously backcountry wheelers that we were, that's what you did. So, but that was the only other time in that stint that I drove any other vehicle other than having my Bronco. So,
wow. So going from, let's see, 4-wheel parts, that wasn't too long ago, was it? And then you moved on and created your own business?
Yeah, that was about a year and a half ago that I left 4-wheel parts and decided that the best way for me to control quality and deadlines and things like that was for me to own my own business. And, dealing in a retail shop like that, where you're dealing with thousands of customers, very quickly, my goal was to do the exact opposite. I wanted to have as few of clients as possible and provide a higher quality of service and a higher quality of work. Well, like most of us, you know, we bought parts for our vehicles, and especially not being a Jeep guy, it was a much more niche market. So you'd buy something to bolt on my Bronco, and it didn't work. It didn't fit right, whatever the case may be. So you had to re-engineer it in order to make it work. And so that just got me into, I was the guinea pig for a lot of my friends when we were building things. It's like, all right, well, I'll buy this stuff. And then we figured out how to build it better, and just kind of continued to do that. It was back in 2001. I did a big overhaul on my Bronco. I went from it being a stock suspension to I did a 3-link in the front with a panhard, and I did a wishbone 3-link in the rear, as cheap as possible because we were young newlyweds, and having my first kid at that time, we didn't have spare money. So
yeah, I was gonna say, what is spare money?
Yeah, exactly. And I borrowed an AC/DC stick welder from a friend of my dad's, and that's what I built all of my suspension with in the garage. Was I designed everything, and I had tried a number of different products that you could buy over the years, and finally just decided that this isn't working. I'm going to make my own. And so that was the start, really, of bigger modifications and learning all those skills. But the biggest joke that we had for years was that when I did that version of mods on my truck, I probably had hours of trying to free the electrode after it stuck to the frame rail and try and break it free so that I could start another arc and make a weld. But so that kind of led into my skill set, and really it wasn't until I worked at 4 Wheel Parts, and the technicians that we were hiring, they were great parts changers, but man, they had no idea how the off-road community worked and how to lift a Jeep, and how just because you put something on the alignment rack and it says this is right doesn't mean that it's going to work right. Yeah. And so it really opened my eyes to the amount of knowledge that I had, acquired over the years. And so I was spending a lot of time trying to teach our technicians, that type of stuff. And so it really wasn't until I went to work for 4 Wheel Parts that I had an appreciation for the amount of knowledge that I had gained in building my own stuff over the years.
And so they gave you a lot more confidence to say, okay, it's time to go out on my own.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and I'm not, I work extremely hard to try and put out a good product. I think, I charge a fair price for a fair product, but you go on Instagram and look at, people that are incredible welders and incredible fabricators, and, you still aspire to be those guys, like Jason Pauly and, Jesse Haynes, and the red dot cars, and even into the desert stuff now with all the Ultra 4. I mean, man, there's just incredible fabricators out there to aspire to. So as soon as you feel like you're feeling good in your skill set, it's pretty easy to keep you humble.
Instagram does that.
It does.
So let's go back into the years of competing and how you got into that, who you drove with, and what you drove and all that kind of stuff. So let's investigate that.
Yeah. So what kind of started me down this path was in 2005, I got invited to go on the Peterson's 4-wheel and off-road ultimate adventure. And I got a free set of BF Goodrich crawlers to put on my Bronco. I got a brand new worn winch to replace my older worn winch that I had. And I mean, that stuff was just so cool to be a part of something, so grand as that, and to be around so many people in the industry of who's who people, and, I met people like Chris Durham and Derek West and Richie Keller, through that from the competitive side of things. But what really kind of opened my eyes again, kind of a similar story from the fabrication side, was that just because these guys were incredible people, like Fred Perry from Clemson in the industry, it didn't mean that they knew how to drive. And that was really eye-opening for me. I mean, I just assumed that. And so we came home from Ultimate Adventure, and it wasn't long. I had put together a plan that I was going to build a vehicle. And at the same time, Tom Wombles and Debbie had bought an incredible rock quarry, and they were going to host local rock crawling competitions. And it's only 4 hours for us to drive over to Hannibal, Missouri, and be a part of that. So like everyone else, I'm going to throw together the cheapest thing that I possibly could find and go have fun with it and see what happens. And I made a phone call to Linda at Trail Tough, told her what we had going on, and she immediately was like, we can set you up with this and this, and this will be perfect for your build. And I was like, well, this is like cheating. What in the world? I'd never dealt with, with sponsor stuff like that before, where it was just incredible to have support from vendors like that. And we had a handful of other good sponsors, but I wanted to do something unique because I knew that would bring attention to our team. And we settled on building, it was a 1996 Geo-Tracker. And a really good friend of mine, Jason Troxel, had put up the $500 for us to buy the vehicle initially. And so we had a handful of parts. We had BF Goodrich crawlers. I had some old wheels. I had scrounged around axles and built, spooled axles front and rear, and built a link suspension underneath this Geo-Tracker. And we used a friend of mine who had a shop in Topeka, Kansas at the time. It was called Expert Off-Road. And another friend of mine, Rob DeBrock, with Muchacho Productions, who was huge in all of the little rock crawling stuff at the time, with doing videos, which were DVDs back then.
Right.
And so we put together, we were going to do a 3-day build and get this vehicle built with as many people as we could throw at it, with our sponsors' help, and build a functioning rock crawler with custom suspension and everything in 3 days. And it was an incredible 3 days. We had a lot of great people that showed up and helped out, and man, it was exhausting. We worked so hard. And we were so close to being able to drive the vehicle out of there. We were missing just some steering linkage and just a couple other things. I mean, it took a while to finish it up, getting the winch and stuff like that. But for the most part, we had probably a good 85% functional vehicle that left that shop after driving in there being 100% stock. And that may not sound like a lot for a Jeep, but going from an independent front suspension to a 3-link front and 4-link rear, custom roll cage and rockers and bumpers and everything that was hand fabricated in there, it wasn't a bolt-on build that we did. It was all very heavy fabrication. So that was incredible. We took that, and our first We Rock event would have been in, I believe, 2006. We had, and I think that was the first event for Hannibal Rocks that season. And so Tom was really concerned that we were some hotshot, big We Rock team coming in to sandbag his series. But we had no idea what we were doing. We were just coming out to have fun. And so we went out there and looked at a bonus line and Scott Angel ended up being my spotter. He came up and helped us during the build, and he actually edged out another friend of mine that was supposed to be my spotter at that time. We got on course, and he's, I don't know, there was a bonus gate, maybe like the third or fourth gate, and he said, well, you want to do that bonus? I said, well, shoot, we still got 5 minutes left on the clock. We should just go play on it and see what happens. And that was our attitude. We were just out to have fun, and it was incredible. We ended up getting a lot of attention because I don't remember where we were at the end of day one, but it was top 3, top 4, and those were against the best people in the country at that time. Derek West, Eric Miller, Jake Tennis, Kurt Shramovich, I think, was there. I mean, we had 14, 15 modified stock vehicles at that event. And it was, and here we are sitting in the top quarter of the field was incredible. So unfortunately we went on the next day and we broke the crankshaft in that old motor, but it ended up dropping down quite a ways because we weren't able to finish. But man, it was, I remember coming home, going to some of our first rock crawling competitions where we podiumed and got a check, and it just felt like we were cheating somehow. It's like we went out, had the time of our lives,
and got paid
to do it. Yeah. So it was incredible. I mean, and I got into competing mainly because of Derek West. I really wanted to know how our skills measured up to the best, in the country. He was undefeated for, I want to say 4 or 5 seasons on the East Coast. So, I mean, he was the guy to beat, him and Richie. And to come in and battle with those guys back and forth, and battle with the Kyles, Kyle Brusso and Kyle Holland, through all those different battles.
Yep.
And Kurt Shramovich. I mean,
and even
that was
even
so
Dwayne
much
Garrettson.
fun.
Yep.
Yes. Yeah. Can't forget Dwayne, because it was always a toss up. We never knew, where we were going to end up, and we knew it was going to be a battle. And that's what we enjoyed was, playing the game, taking chances. And they forced you to, you forced us to do things. Well, Little Rich forced us to do things that there is no way I would have done on a trail ride. But, when you're sitting there a couple points out of first place and you can take a 10-point bonus, and it just involves you kind of throwing the car off a cliff, it's like, well, why not? We'll give it a whirl. And, and take those chances. And really one of my my favorite modified stock, man, I don't know, there's so many. We went to, we were in Dayton, Tennessee one time competing against Kurt Shramovich. We were first and second, right back and forth together. And Lil Rich had put like a 6-foot tall vertical wall and just tossed 2 cones on it to mess with Kurt, because he knew Kurt was going to go for it. And I mean,
Sucker
we
lines.
stretched. Yeah, that's exactly what it was. And we stretched that little Geo Tracker. I can't remember if it was 87 inches or 89-inch wheelbase. I mean, we stretched it for everything we could per the rules. And we knew we had to take every chance we could to try and beat Kurt. And we got on this wall. I just put the front tires on it just a little bit, and I just held the throttle down, and it just leapt up that 6-foot vertical climb. And I couldn't believe it. I would have bet everything in my life that a vehicle of our size would never go up that, but it made it. And it was, there's just so many moments like that were so incredible. We went to Roush Creek again, competing against all of those guys that were local up there that played on that man-made course. So it doesn't change so much. And we did, we won that event. We rolled the car twice, but were able to get it righted in the rain and typical East Coast wheeling. A heavy downpour, and I flopped the car over in a big bowl, and I was ready to call it quits. And Scott's like, no, crank it this way and pin it. and we got it righted back up, and we had less than 30 seconds to clear the course, and we got out, finished the course, and it was just, I mean, the adrenaline was intense. It was so much fun, and probably one of my favorite things to come into Roush Creek, where those guys have played time and time again, and bring home a win from there was, I mean, that's definitely cloud nine. So having Scott on board, we're very similar. I like my vehicles to look nice and function to the best of their ability, and Scott's the same way. I'm a little more conservative on the funding side of things, and Scott came in and it's like, you know, hey, we got to do this. We got to, you know, it needs to steer better. We need to get rid of these spools. And, you know, Cooper Tires came on board with us, and we switched over to Cooper Tires, you know, Raceline beadlocks and things like that, that every season that car just kept getting better and better. And then Scott is more of a go fast driver. I am definitely not a go fast. Technical rock crawling is my thing. But in 2009, late 2008, we rebuilt the car to still meet We Rock modified stock class rules, but also be as competitive as we could possibly make a very low center of gravity 35-inch tall tire for King of the Hammers. And so we swapped out and put a 2-liter engine in it, automatic transmission, and we had a tracker transfer case mated to the Jeep Dana 300, and we had all of that stuff in there, and just did everything we could to make that car what we could with it. And so we went to King of the Hammers in 2009. It was an absolute blast to be a part of that out there. It was still so grassroots at the time. It was so much fun, and, you know, really enjoyed that. We took off from the start line. I was scared to death. I was holding on to my grab bar for everything I could do. Scott got air off of the first jump in the infield, and then as soon as we landed on the tabletop, the throttle became disconnected. And we were running up back door at that point, and we had measured everything out. We had tow straps, and we had our winch line. And so our plan was we were going to pull up to back door. I was going to jump out. I was going to hook on the furthest winch point, winch up the big ledge on back door. We could pull it up on the spotter strap, but I couldn't do it consistently. And so we thought it would just be smart and just play it safe, winch up, drop the tow strap, rehook the winch so that we didn't have to, you know, we could save all that time. So here I am sitting in the passenger seat, fully buckled in. I've got 50 feet of tow straps and winch rope sitting on my lap so that I could jump out at back door. And so Scott jumps out, gets all unbuckled, jumps out, puts the throttle cable back on, and finally gets back in, gets everything buckled back in. I say finally, it only took a minute and a half watching on the GoPro. But it seemed like an hour. It seemed like forever. And I got out at back door. We got everything winched up. He cleared up out of the valley, and I stayed there. I burnt my lungs so bad. I ran as hard as I could, so I could hardly breathe. And it was awesome. I mean, still at that point, the John Terhune and those guys were standing right there at back door, and they brought me a beer over, and it was like, oh, that was awesome, you know? And at the end of all of the qualifying for what it was in Last Chance for 2009, we missed qualifying for the race. There was no everyman challenge or anything. There was just the one class. We missed qualifying by just over a minute. So if it wouldn't have been for that coming apart, we would have beat that car and ourselves to death out there in Johnson Valley, but we would have had a blast doing it. Yeah. I wish you guys would have had the chance to do that. That would have been awesome to see that little tracker. It was one of my favorite cars in the stock class, just because it was so full-bodied, and those are a unibody, aren't they? No, it was a body on frame. Actually, when I ran Ultimate Adventure with Tim Hardy and he had his Samurai, right, I was like, man, I need something like that. Well, we went to the Badlands Off-Road Park not long after that, and there was a gentleman that was guiding us around, in a pretty much stock Geo tracker. It had like a 3-inch body lift on it and like 31-inch boggers. And he was trying some hill and ended up rolling it over. And I got to looking at it, and I was like, man, this is a perfect platform. The frame rails are straight, basically 2x4 box tubing. It's already got a 3-link in the rear with coils, and in the front's IFS. So I went and bought one. That was after that point, that was my daily driver for quite a while. Was in a 93. It was that terrible teal color, that Geo had, that green, Mountain Dew green kind of color. And that's what I drove back and forth to the engineering firm for quite a while, until I finally just wheeled it so much that it wasn't holding together very well anymore. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of what led to that vehicle decision was wheeling with Tim Hardy and his Samurai, and then seeing that, obviously, in my opinion, the answer to the rollover problems with the Samurai was to lower the center of gravity as much as possible in the Geos. And so, I mean, that makes, in the Suzuki Sidekicks, well, that's what you want in an off-road vehicle, is center of gravity as low as possible. Well, this was designed specifically as an answer to that. So, it seemed like we could take advantage of a lot of that factory engineering that went into those Suzuki Sidekicks and trackers.
Yeah, good choice. Now, Brian Cooper has that car now, doesn't he?
He does. Yeah, and it couldn't have gone to a better family. Those guys are incredible and great drivers. It sits for 364 days out of the year, but when We Rock comes to Dayton, Tennessee,
yep, he rolls it out.
They bring it out,
yep.
And they wail on that car.
Yes, they do.
But I mean, we trail wheeled it a little bit. It wasn't fun to trail wheel. It rattled a lot, and it was hot, and you couldn't see anything out of it because you sat so low in the car. But when we were out playing, that car would really show up a lot of full tube chassis buggies that were on bigger tires, and it would do that a lot, and that's a lot thanks in part to people like Steve Sharp and Jesse Haynes and Jason Pauly, that I was able to absorb what they were doing and have some of their guidance in building vehicles, and package that all into a little 89-inch wheelbase Geo tracker.
Yeah, and then you guys approached the competitions very well. From what I remember, especially, you and Scott you had a knack for finding the lines, for figuring out the strategy, and always being at the top without taking huge risks. Some of the guys would just, if there was a bonus, they just had to do it, and some of those bonuses were sucker lines, but you guys seemed to be able to figure out which ones were the right ones to take.
Yeah, we did. And I will say that we were blessed with we were blessed with the best team in rock crawling ever. We had Jeremy and Josh Hislop, who were brothers, who were incredibly mechanically minded, and great people to boot. Jason Troxel, Adam Ross, and Dave Fugit, and I'm sure a couple of other Scots in there as well, that would come out and support us, at the events. And if you have somebody that's helping you get buckled in the car and helping you make sure that the intercoms are working correctly, or if the car breaks down, they're helping get parts and taking that load off of a driver and spotter to do that, that frees us up a lot to concentrate on our job and the courses and things like that. So I watched a lot of the courses before, as soon as we'd get done, I'd move to the next course and I would study what was going on and try and learn what other teams were doing. And Scott and I were both very good at discussing line options, and Scott was really good at the game too. He kept track of all of, the scores of other teams and what we needed to do in order to win versus just going out there and, and taking chances. But ultimately for me, at the end of the day, even if we won, there's events that we won and, beat everybody else, but we're driving home with our heads low because the courses beat us. So at the end of the day, that was all I wanted to do, is I wanted to beat the courses. And if we came out on top, that was even better. But I wanted, all of our friends to succeed in that way too, like a trail ride, just because that's what I grew up with. And that's the mentality I had, was that we're going to beat the We Rock courses, whether it was Josh or Little Rich or you setting courses. At the end of the day, that's what I wanted to win.
Right. That chess match.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. So and having that team, and we had a traveling group. We had a 34-foot gooseneck that had a slide-in camper on the front. We would back the tracker on up to that, and then we had an 8-foot pop-up that we would winch onto the back of the trailer, and that's how we would travel from California to Pennsylvania, Tennessee, and everywhere in between. Is we'd all jump in the back of Scott's dually and travel the country. I think we did in 2000, would have been 2009. I'm pretty certain we did like 12,000 miles on his dually just in competing. So that's off-road stuff is what I live and breathe, and that was perfect for me.
Yeah, I'm glad you're still living it and breathing it.
Oh yeah, me too.
So
we got to the point where that was really preventing us from going out and camping and doing other family vacation stuff. And my wife never asked for hardly anything ever, and she was tired of camping in parking lots to go to events. And because that's what we did. We didn't get hotels or anything like that. We camp at every event. And so she said that she wanted to go do more recreational wheeling. And so that's kind of what ended the Rubber Belly racing, efforts right there, was that the economy was, hadn't been good for a year or two, and things were going downhill, and it just made sense for us to get back on par financially. So we kind of went that direction, but it you can't get it out of your blood. I mean, that's it's something that the people, I love being around the people. I love being around the competitions and seeing how people react to different challenges and all of that. It's just so much fun.
Absolutely. That's why I've been doing it for over 20 years now. So let's talk about the name of the race team, Rubber Belly. How did that come about?
I don't know that I really know the full story on it, but Jason Troxel was the one that put up the money that actually started our racing efforts with We Rock, and his nickname in school, one way or another, was Rubber Belly. Well, so as a thank you to him for doing that, that's what we named the team, was because if it wasn't for him, I didn't have a spare $500 to buy another car that I didn't need.
Right.
And so if it wasn't for his efforts to do that, it wouldn't have happened, really. It might have later, but it definitely wouldn't have been without his efforts and the team and Scott's. We ended up going in partners, as more and more money got spent on the car, into the racing effort. So it was, we definitely wouldn't have been able to do near the things that we did without those guys' support.
Excellent. So now you guys get out of competing and you're just trail wheeling and having fun. And when did the Kansas Rocks park come about?
Yeah.
I know that you had something to do with that. Am I correct?
Yes. Oh my goodness. That would have been back early 2000s. Man, been a part of that for a very, very long time. I unfortunately haven't been as active with it as I would like to, just with my wife's health issues, and that over the past 4 or 5 years has really limited my abilities there. But it's been almost 20 years that we've opened up Kansas Rocks Recreation Park, located in Fort Scott, Kansas. And everything from, we originally leased the property with money from the state of Kansas, did a 15-year lease on it. We now own it. We've bought additional property. We've got bathrooms, shelter houses, all kinds of really nice facilities, camping facilities, and everything going in now too. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and it's been a great way for us who live the lifestyle to try and teach those that are coming into the sport now, the etiquette of how to do that. We teach 101 courses a number of times during the year. So if you just bought your brand new JL or JK, Wrangler, you can bring that out and be taught the appropriate ways to, use low range or use your lockers, how to yield the traffic, coming the other way on the trail, all of that stuff that we take for granted because we grew up, doing this, that no one, when you just jump in buying a brand new Rubicon, you have no idea. These guys want to go to the biggest obstacle in the park and drive straight there because they just bought a brand new buggy and they don't have any concept of etiquette in off-road. And there's really a lot of that.
Yeah, people need to learn to drive without all their tools first.
Yeah, no, I think it makes you a much better driver for sure.
Right. Okay, so then you started, I called you up one day and said, hey, would you like to announce? And you came out and started announcing, and you were a natural. Just wanted to let you know that.
I appreciate that. I do like to talk. That is very, very known. It was definitely very, very intimidating. I grew up playing in a rock band. I played drums in a rock band in high school. I played in marching band and both symphonic orchestra and band and all of that in the percussion. And it was always so nerve-wracking. It wasn't like you could hide in the clarinet section and just fake what you were doing. You were the one guy crashing the cymbals, and oh my gosh, that was so nerve-wracking. But it helped, all of those things kind of helped prepare me to put myself out there and mess up and say dumb things, that other people are listening to. And I got the opportunity, once we stopped competing and sold the tracker to Brian Cooper, I found that was such a great way for me to still be involved with rock crawling and honestly have that backstage pass, to be able to help out, but also to be able to wander the courses and kind of do whatever I wanted to do. So it was just such a natural fit for me. And I really, really enjoyed it. I got to learn from Dustin Webster. We worked together for a number of years at Grand Nationals, and that was just such an incredible experience. Dustin had been around forever and was an incredible announcer. I would love to be able to do some of the things that he would do for the national anthem, and I get choked up too bad and I can't talk about that, so we just play the national anthem. But I would love to be able to hone that skill even further and become a better announcer, as I go through my life.
Well, that's good to hear. We're going to be doing an event in Oklahoma, in Glencoe, Oklahoma this year with We Rock. So we're not too far away from you. So hopefully now that you're self-employed, maybe you'll have a little bit of time, you can come out and help me set courses.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that would be great. I would love to come down and help. And I know I got to help set the shootout course at Grand Nationals last season in Cedar City, and I don't want to hurt myself, patting you and I on the back, but I think we did a pretty darn good job.
I think that shootout course that whole event was awesome, but the way that the shootout unfolded with the guys that were in it and what they attempted to do and what they pulled off was just phenomenal. Even Rich, my son, came up and said, wow, you knocked that one out of the park. So
I couldn't agree more. That was, we've been around competitive rock crawling since 2005, and I've seen Jason Pauley, I've seen I mean, just a huge list of who's who, the best competitors out there. And last season was probably the best shootout I think I've ever been a part of and witnessed. That was just incredible. And to be a small part of that was, with Tacoma out there announcing, was absolutely incredible. It's definitely on the top of my list.
Yeah, it was a great one. Let's see. Is there? Oh, we should talk about your son and what you guys did over the last couple of years competing. You want to talk
Yeah,
about
for
that?
sure.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So my wife passed away a little over 2 years ago. She had breast cancer, that we thought we had beat, but it spread to the lining of her brain, and we just weren't able to overcome that. So she passed away a little over 2 years ago, and I knew that I had a limited amount of time with my boys before my oldest graduated high school, and honestly my youngest graduates, and they go on and do things with their lives. So I made the decision that I really wanted to jump in the rig and go out and get back into competitive rock crawling. My youngest has been in it from a very young age, running the old Nylent RC car, or the Nylent Jeeps, now to the new axial stuff. I bought Job Johnson's old Pro Mod car, because I'd started building the boys a kid buggy, and I realized that by the time I was going to get done with it, they were going to be too big, and it just didn't make sense. So I ended up buying Job Johnson's old Cooper Tire sponsored Pro Mod. He had taken the axles out of it and transfer case and all of that, but he had put back stuff that made it fairly functional. And so at 7 years old, we went and competed at our rock in what they called she-rock. It was a female rock crawling, but basically it was the non-competitive guys, I guess, for the most part. So the kids were in it, and a lot of the female judges in that. And we went up against people like Brandon Blume was spotting for like a 18, 19-year-old female that was had her own Jeep, been driving for a couple of years. And some other really should have been good quality teams. And Caleb and I brought his 31-inch tall tired Pro Mod car with no locker in the front. It didn't steer very well, and super low to the ground. And I was able to spot him through the courses, and he actually won. And so he has a knack for understanding how the vehicle works, and is an incredible listener, which, as you know, is the majority of the game.
Yes.
If you get your driver to listen to what you're telling him to do, and he does. He trusts me way more than he should, because I'm his dad, and and he believes what I'm telling him to do is safe, and
you've done a good job as a dad then, because a lot of kids don't listen.
Yeah. So we had the opportunity. I don't even remember what we were planning on doing. But Kenny Blume the year before had reached out and asked me to drive his Pro Mod car. And the timing wasn't good with my wife and that, so I couldn't do it. But then, once she passed, I was like, this is a good opportunity for us to spend time as a family. And honestly, for us to be in the vehicle together is my favorite time. There's nothing else going on. Everybody can kind of talk about whatever they want to talk about. And, it's just, to me, that's the best time, is when we're all forced into a vehicle together with nothing else going on. There's not video games and, other distractions. Everybody can talk freely. So, and I really wanted that for my oldest son's, last year of high school, to make sure I captured that. So we got the opportunity to drive Kenny Blume's Pro Modified car, and it was definitely a learning curve to operate that vehicle. It worked so much different than the cars that I build, and you really had to drive it. So it's really a true credit to Caleb to get in there. I mean, I put him in the driver's seat down in Disney, Oklahoma, and said, where we met Kenny. And I said, all right, well, let's go test this out. And I almost rolled him over in just a little ravine, had it all wadded up in the car trying to roll over, and he had to save it within 3 minutes of jumping in the driver's seat. So, it's really a true credit to his driving skills of operating, an unknown vehicle and jumping in there. And, it was an absolute blast. We didn't do as well as we liked, but we were the East Coast Series winners. So it's really hard to be upset about that. We went to Grand Nationals, and the thing with going to Farmington, New Mexico is it's big. And really there's only a certain amount that a spotter can do out there. Otherwise, you really have to drive the car and make the car do what you want. And we were right there, with Craig Allen and Ryan Maxfield, and we had two rollovers, one of them incredible from top to bottom, end over end with the pirouette in the middle of it. If you want to check it out, you can find Caleb_good_ on Instagram, and he's got that on his Instagram there. It is an incredible crash, like most that you see from Farmington. When something goes wrong, it goes wrong spectacularly out there. So
absolutely.
But even with two rollovers, we were still right there with those guys and putting pressure on Ryan Maxfield in second place at Grand Nationals. So, that's a really good feeling. We didn't expect, the world, for our first time out working together in an unknown vehicle and that. And wow, it was such a great experience. We were in Dayton, Tennessee, and we had a lot of family from Kansas City make the 12-hour drive all the way out there to support us. And my oldest son, Colby, is explaining what's going on to family and making sure we had waters and things like that. It was just such a great bonding experience. And I'm really glad that we took the opportunity to do that, as a family.
Yeah. So what's in store for the future for the goods? I know that you've got your shop. Caleb is got 2 more years of high school left.
Yep. Yeah. So at that Grand Nationals in 2019, we picked up a unlimited class chassis from Jesse Haynes. We were hoping to have that together last season, but owning your own business and trying to get work out the door and all of that just has kind of got backburnered a little bit. But we are working real hard to have the new chassis put together and functioning for the 2021 series of We Rock. And really excited to get back out, and we'll be there whether it's in an unlimited car. We might take his trail car, or we might just come support the event and help set courses. But one way or another, we'll be a part of the We Rock series for this season. And then just continuing to kind of do work from home for probably the next couple of years. I would really like to maybe get into assisting a manufacturer, with outside sales or something like that. That's in the rock sports arena, something that whether it's Jeeps or the new Bronco, whatever the case may be, I think maybe that would be a good fit for me to try and sell something more from the manufacturing side on wholesale versus, a retail side thing. I think that would be a good fit for me. But you know what, there's a lot that can happen between now and then. And for the time being, I'm just going to focus on trying to build the coolest vehicles I possibly can, at the shop, Jake's Off-Road in Kansas City, and just trying to focus on that.
Cool. So one of the things that Fred Williams started was he asked me a question. And so now I'm asking everybody I interview if there's anything that they would like to ask me. And I spring this on people, so I don't give you much time to think about it. But is there something that you've always said, God, I need to ask Rich this? If you've got something, shoot it.
Yeah, no, we we talk a decent amount at the events, and or I'll text you if there's something that I really want to know. But more than anything, I just can't say, thank you enough to continue, to push forward and be the rock crawling, promoter that we have, to come out and play and have fun and hone our skills, and, to bring together such incredible competitors and incredible judges, making the change to Cedar City last year. We had a lot of judges that came up from Farmington, New Mexico to Cedar City, Utah. And, it just is such an incredible family, of all of us together. And if it wasn't for you and Shelly continuing to do that, it would be lost, and we wouldn't have the same outlet, to get together. So I really appreciate you guys for everything that you've done and continue to do.
Well, I appreciate that. So I guess we've hit all the points. Is there anything that we didn't hit that you want to talk about?
No, I think that covers just about everything. I'm very humbled to be on with you and have a conversation with you today. It's it's definitely a dream, but wow, the guys you've had on, the men and women you've had on the program so far are so entrenched, and they're the who's who of rock crawling. And I really felt like I missed out on a lot of the early stuff, but in reality, I did. I mean, we didn't get involved until, late 2005 or so, but it did highlight a lot of the things that we were around for. We got to compete in the Cooper Tires All Stock Nationals that you guys hosted. We got to go to Tooele. We've been so many incredible places, and that's really my favorite part of competing, is going to new places and competing on new terrain. It just has that allure to me. It's just so exciting to try and figure out a new line and how to accomplish something as effortlessly as you can.
Yep. Excellent. Well, okay. Well, thank you, Jake, for coming on and spending an hour and a half or so with us, and being the friend that you have over the years, coming out and doing the announcing. It's whether you've done it with Dustin or you've done it with Tacoma or you've done it on your own, you've always done a superior job of informing the spectators about what is actually happening on course. That's a big, important job, and we really appreciate you doing it.
Well, I appreciate you allowing me to do that. It's definitely an honor, and man, we've had some great times with Tacoma and I working back and forth and really trying to take our announcing to the next level to really, make a better sellable product for you, is obviously the end result. If whatever we can do to help keep We Rock on the road and putting on events is what we're all about. So thank you for allowing me to be a part of it.
Well, same here. So great. Have a good evening, and say hello to the kids for me, and we'll talk again here shortly.
All right. Sounds great. We will see you soon.
All right. If you enjoy these podcasts, please give us a rating. Share some feedback with us via Facebook or Instagram, and share our link among your friends who might be like-minded. Well, that brings this episode to an end. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll catch you next week with Conversations with Big Rich. Thank you very much.